In 2010, the music world was hit with a bombshell confession that nobody saw coming. Mick Hucknall, the legendary frontman of Simply Red, a band that had shattered sales records with over 50 million albums worldwide, walked into the public eye and made an admission so candid it shocked the entire industry. He apologized to nearly 1,000 women. His reasoning? He had spent years treating them as disposable conquests during the peak of his fame. But here's the thing that makes this story so compelling. This wasn't just another celebrity scandal. Behind that apology was decades of hidden pain, a childhood wound that never healed, and a lifetime of desperately seeking something he never got. Today, we're uncovering the full story of how a working-class kid from Manchester became one of the world's biggest pop stars, and the psychological price he paid for that success. Every great tragedy often starts with a single moment. For 3-year-old Mick Hucknall, that moment came in 1963 when his mother, Maureen, simply packed her bags and disappeared from his life without explanation. One day she was there, the next day she wasn't. His father, Reg, a barber working long hours in working-class Manchester just to keep food on the table, was left to raise a young boy alone. This was unusual for the time. Men didn't do that in Britain in the 1960s. Single fathers were practically unheard of. Reg buried himself in work, day after day, leaving Mick to navigate childhood in an emotional void. There was no mother to comfort him, no maternal figure to tell him he was loved. Just silence, loneliness, and the hollow feeling of abandonment that he couldn't quite understand. Mick rarely spoke about what he was feeling. The words stayed trapped inside. He spent countless hours alone, struggling to connect with other kids, feeling like an outsider, like something was fundamentally wrong with him. That loss would become the emotional blueprint of his entire life. As he got older, something shifted inside him. That void his mother left behind transformed into an insatiable hunger for validation and affection from women. He later admitted something that seemed almost unbelievable. He wanted to be loved by every single woman in the world. At the time, it sounded like rockstar ego talking. In reality, it was a damaged child searching for what he'd lost at 3 years old. By the late 1970s, Manchester was becoming the epicenter of Britain's punk revolution. Mick was drawn to the raw energy of it all. In 1977, at just 17 years old, he formed a band called the Frantic Elevators and channeled everything. His frustration, his pain, his desperation, into loud, aggressive punk rock. They played cramped venues across northern England, loading their own equipment into broken-down vans, playing for almost nothing. For 4 grueling years, the Frantic Elevators remained stuck in obscurity. They recorded independent singles that nobody heard. Radio stations ignored them. Chart success never came. There was one song, though, something Mick had written alone in his bedroom, away from the noise and chaos. It was called Holding Back the Years. Unlike their other material, it was slower, more introspective, deeply personal. But in the punk scene of the late 70s, vulnerability wasn't cool. So the song went nowhere. By 1982, with nothing to show for 4 years of effort except empty pockets and broken dreams, the Frantic Elevators dissolved. At 22, Mick was back in Manchester with absolutely nothing. No record deal. No band. No prospects. But something inside him had shifted during those years on the road. He'd spent countless hours listening to soul, blues, and R&B, artists who could make a listener feel everything without screaming. He realized his voice didn't belong in punk. It was too smooth, too soulful, too different from anything the indie scene had to offer. He had a choice: give up on music or completely reinvent himself. He chose reinvention. In 1984, Mick did something radical. He left punk behind entirely and started assembling a new group of musicians from Manchester's soul scene. He wasn't repeating the mistakes of the past. This time, he was building a project specifically designed around his voice and the sound he'd been dreaming about. Simply Red was born. The band's identity was impossible to miss. Mick's signature curly red hair, oversized coats, and vintage hats made him instantly recognizable. Perfect timing, since MTV was turning music videos into an art form. But beyond appearance, his voice was the real weapon. Journalists called it blue-eyed soul, a term for white artists performing authentic R&B and soul music. His vocal range allowed him to navigate between buttery smooth melodies and complex emotional runs that made people stop whatever they were doing and listen. Music executives took notice almost immediately. In 1985, Elektra Records signed Simply Red and paired them with legendary producer Stuart Levine. Their debut album, Picture Book, hit stores with an explosive first single, a cover of Money's Too Tight to Mention. The track caught fire. Within weeks, it climbed into the UK top 10 and began gaining serious momentum on charts worldwide. Then came the song that changed everything. That bedroom song from his teenage years? Mick resurrected it. The Frantic Elevators version had been rough and forgettable. But when Stuart Levine heard it again, something clicked. He stripped away the heavy guitars, removed the punk edge, and rebuilt it from the ground up. The new arrangement was minimalist, just a gentle drum beat, understated bass, and Mick's voice sitting at the center, unguarded and raw. The lyrics were autobiographical. Some lines painted a portrait of his father's struggle to raise him alone. Others captured the ache of maternal abandonment. This wasn't a manufactured pop song. This was a young man taking his most painful memories and turning them into art. The music video brought the story to life visually. Shot in the English countryside, it featured train tracks, weathered brick buildings, and a boy walking through open fields, imagery that captured the isolation Mick had felt as a child. MTV put it into heavy rotation. By July 1986, Holding Back the Years had climbed to #1 on the US Billboard Hot 100 chart. A 25-year-old singer from Northern England had just released the most personal song of his life, and the entire world was listening. Millions of people who'd never experienced maternal abandonment found their own pain reflected in those lyrics. The song became more than a hit. It became a moment where strangers felt less alone. For Mick, though, the victory came with a price. Every single night for the next several years, he would step onto massive stages and relive his childhood trauma in front of screaming crowds. The fame and fortune were intoxicating, but singing about his deepest wounds night after night, without any genuine healing happening, was slowly tearing him apart. Success happened so fast that Mick barely had time to process it. From living paycheck to paycheck in Manchester, he suddenly found himself in private jets, 5-star hotel suites, and exclusive clubs where the world's biggest celebrities were his peers. Simply Red's world tours became massive productions, entire ecosystems of staff, musicians, and hangers-on revolving around the band's schedule. The backstage was a blur. Beautiful women constantly circulating. Alcohol everywhere. People wanting a piece of him. For a man who'd spent his entire childhood feeling unwanted and alone, it was intoxicating, literally and figuratively. His romantic encounters became shorter and more frequent, sometimes lasting just hours before he moved on to the next city, the next woman, the next fix of validation. It was a cycle designed to fill a void that could never actually be filled. By the late 1980s, the tabloid press had painted Mick as an arrogant, difficult rock star obsessed with his image and his conquests. They weren't entirely wrong, but they also didn't understand what was driving the behavior. Mick was using fame and female attention like a drug, masking the loneliness, the insecurity, the nagging sense that he didn't deserve any of this. Behind the scenes, he could be difficult. He clashed with record executives who tried to tell him what to do. He argued with critics who questioned his artistic choices. That combative energy eventually created tension within Simply Red itself. Original band members began leaving. What started as a collaborative project gradually transformed into Mick's solo vehicle. He controlled everything, made all the decisions, and bore all the weight. As the 80s ended, Mick was working longer studio hours, determined to keep Simply Red at the top of the charts. He was successful by every external measure. He had money, fame, celebrity relationships, sold-out arenas. Yet when the shows ended and the crowds dispersed, he'd return to his hotel room alone, and the emptiness would return. Nothing he had accumulated actually made him feel loved. In 1991, Simply Red released Stars. The album was a commercial colossus. It became the best-selling record in the United Kingdom for 2 consecutive years, 1991 and 1992. It was certified diamond. It was everywhere. But supporting an album that massive meant committing to years of touring. Night after night, arena after arena, Mick performing at the absolute peak of his powers while internally collapsing. By 1996, something inside him had shut down. 5 years into what would become a brutal drinking problem, Mick was consuming massive amounts of alcohol daily. He was still a high-functioning addict. He could still step on stage and deliver remarkable vocal performances, but his body and mind were deteriorating rapidly. Photos from the late 90s show a man looking exhausted, worn down, fundamentally changed from the vibrant performer he'd been just years earlier. His artistic output began suffering. Albums like Blue, 1998, and Love and the Russian Winter, 1999, received lukewarm responses from critics who noticed the absence of the energy and emotional depth that had made Simply Red's earlier work so captivating. Then something happened that he wasn't prepared for. A blast from the past that would force him to confront everything he'd been running from. After nearly 4 decades of complete silence, his mother emerged. Mick Hucknall gave an explosive interview to the British press, not from Manchester, but from Dallas, Texas, where she'd been living all those years. And she came out swinging. She denied the narrative Mick had built his entire career on. She claimed she hadn't abandoned him out of cruelty or indifference. She'd left to escape an unstable marriage with his father. According to her version of events, she was a woman trying to save herself from a miserable situation, not a heartless mother abandoning her child. But what really cut was this. She expressed fury at being portrayed as the villain in a global hit song. She was so angry, in fact, that she told reporters she would physically slap Mick if she ever encountered him again for misrepresenting her character and profiting from it. The revelation sparked a media firestorm. Journalists began asking uncomfortable questions. Had Mick weaponized his childhood pain to build a sympathetic public image? Had he distorted the truth to sell more records? Was his most iconic song built on a lie? The public fallout hit Mick like a wrecking ball. Years of drinking had already destabilized him emotionally. Now, his carefully constructed narrative, the foundation of his entire artistic identity, was being questioned on a global stage. His mother's sudden reappearance, years of tabloid speculation about whether they'd reconcile, and his own refusal to play along with the media's desire for a heartwarming reunion, all combined to create a perfect storm of public shame and private anguish. He refused to reconcile with someone who felt like a stranger. He didn't believe her sudden interest in him had anything to do with maternal love. He suspected it was about his fortune. But her claims forced him to question everything he'd believed about his childhood and, by extension, about himself. What the tabloids and critics never understood was that the arrogant rock star persona was armor. Years later, Mick would explain that the tough exterior, the willingness to fight with journalists and executives, the brash confidence, all of it was a defense mechanism. Beneath that public image was a deeply insecure man haunted by shyness and self-doubt. The confidence was a performance, designed to hide how unsure of himself he really felt. His need for validation extended beyond romantic conquests. In the late 1990s, he became a vocal supporter of Tony Blair and New Labour, even donating money and appearing at campaign events. He genuinely believed in the change they promised. But as political scandals mounted and idealistic promises turned into compromises and disappointments, Mick felt betrayed. The enthusiasm faded. Eventually, he withdrew from political discourse entirely. Away from the music industry and the headlines, though, Mick was making strategic moves that would ultimately save his life. He understood something crucial: pop stardom wasn't forever. His success might not last. So he began diversifying his wealth into ventures that could provide lasting stability. He built a real estate portfolio across Europe. He invested in a successful construction company. But his most personal venture was an Italian winery. On the slopes of Mount Etna in Sicily, Mick founded Il Canut, the singer, in Italian. This wasn't a vanity project where he simply slapped his name on bottles. He was genuinely involved in the winemaking process, learning the craft, helping produce wines that earned respect from international critics. He also purchased the Glenmore estate in County Donegal, Ireland, a massive property along quiet rivers that he transformed into a world-class tourism and sport fishing destination. Managing these projects personally kept him grounded. Working with his hands on real, tangible projects outside the entertainment industry gave him something he desperately needed: purpose and perspective that didn't depend on applause or chart positions. These ventures, combined with growing sobriety, began to stabilize his mental health and distance him from the lifestyle triggers that had nearly destroyed him. After 25 years of creating hit records and selling over 50 million albums worldwide, Mick made a decision that surprised the industry. He was bringing Simply Red to an end. He was exhausted by the pressure. The constant need to chase chart success, to satisfy record labels, to keep the machine running, it had hollowed him out. He wanted the freedom to create music because he loved it, not because shareholders demanded another hit single. To give his global fanbase a proper goodbye, Simply Red launched a massive farewell world tour in 2010 that spanned multiple continents. 4 months, the band traveled across Europe, South America, and Asia, playing emotional shows in packed arenas. The journey concluded in December 2010 at London's O2 Arena, where Mick performed a set of the band's greatest songs in front of thousands of devoted fans, a bittersweet finale to a 25-year career. Stepping away from touring meant escaping the lifestyle that had nearly consumed him. The late nights, the constant parties, the endless supply of alcohol and enabling hangers-on, all of it finally ended. Removing himself from that environment allowed him to create real distance between himself and the triggers that had fueled his addiction. The industry took time to reflect on what Simply Red had accomplished. Critics and musicians credited Mick with bringing soul and R&B to a mainstream audience that might never have discovered those genres otherwise. He'd kept his music and voice relevant through 2 decades of changing trends, earning genuine respect in an industry that can be merciless to aging performers. With the crowds gone and the touring schedule finally silent, Mick entered a quiet chapter of his life. And in that stillness, something unexpected happened. He found what he'd been searching for his entire career. No one who'd followed Mick's career would have predicted this ending. The man who'd built his mythology on being rock's most famous bachelor, who'd calculated his conquests in the thousands, who'd used relationships as a substitute for genuine human connection, that man fell in love. For real this time. Her name was Gabriella Westbury. In 2010, in a private ceremony at the historic Fortare Castle in Scotland, they married. Not long after, they welcomed a daughter into their lives, Romy True. Becoming a father fundamentally rewired Mick's priorities. For the first time in his adult life, he built a home, not a showcase or a status symbol, but an actual home filled with love, stability, and security. The things he'd never had as a child, he now provided for his daughter. Raising Rory became a form of healing. Every moment spent as an engaged, present father was an answer to the abandoned 3-year-old he'd been decades earlier. The emotional void his mother left behind was finally, actually being filled, not through conquest or performance, but through genuine connection and unconditional love. Today, Mick divides his time between family homes in England, his estate in Ireland, and his Sicilian vineyard. As he entered his 60s, his perspective on his younger years shifted dramatically. Instead of shame or regret, he developed understanding. He recognized that much of the behavior that used to make him cringe was simply a young man desperately seeking connection, love, and a sense of belonging, things every human needs. Away from the spotlight, he also began giving back. He supports music education programs and community welfare projects, often doing this work without seeking publicity or recognition, a far cry from the ego-driven performer of decades past. He had conquered his demons. He'd found peace at home. And he thought that chapter of his life was closed. Then 2025 arrived. To commemorate 40 years since Simply Red's formation, Mick shocked the industry with an announcement. The band was reforming for a massive anniversary tour spanning 2025 and 2026 across the UK, Ireland, and continental Europe. What happened next stunned everyone. Night after night, audiences and critics alike were astonished. Even in his mid-60s, Mick's voice remained what it had always been: smooth, immaculate, untouched by time. The instrument that had carried him through decades of drama and acclaim was still delivering remarkable performances. This wasn't a cash-grab nostalgia tour. Simply Red released fresh studio material with the album Time and a special retrospective project called Recollections, featuring newly recorded versions of their classic hits. The music industry recognized the artistic contribution of his career when Mick received the prestigious ASCAP Golden Note Award in London, cementing his legacy as not just a performer, but a master songwriter. He even made surprise appearances at major festivals alongside genuine legends, including Rod Stewart, performing for massive crowds at events like Glastonbury. These moments felt like a full circle, a man who'd spent his 20s and 30s chasing validation through conquest, now finding satisfaction through artistic contribution and shared experience. Standing on those stages again, Mick understood something that had taken him a lifetime to learn. His voice and music had survived decades of criticism, tabloid headlines, public scandals, and personal destruction. In the end, what mattered most wasn't the conquest, the money, or the fame. It was the voice he'd been given, the family he'd built, and the quieter life he'd constructed away from the spotlight's glare. The journey from a 3-year-old boy abandoned in Manchester to a global music icon to a man finally at peace with himself isn't just a story about celebrity. It's a story about trauma, redemption, the masks we wear, and the possibility of genuine change even after decades of self-destruction. Mick Hucknall's life reminds us that success without healing is just an elaborate escape. But healing, real healing, through family, through purpose, through genuine connection, that's where the real victory lies. What's your take on his journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories of the world's most fascinating icons. Thanks for watching.